Yeah. Okay, so recording the session. You're welcome to today's session, which is Beyond Profits, Finding Purpose in Business, Finding Purpose in Business. So we'll be looking at this, looking at it from angle relating to either you running your own business, finding purpose in that, or you being part of a business as well, so finding purpose in the business to be a part of. Although I expect that we'll talk a lot around the direction of you starting it or you running it. And okay, I need to put everybody on mute. Okay, why can't I find that now? A minute, I just try to mute everyone. Mute all, and then I'm on mute our guest today. Hold on, I'm not sure if 1 minute. On mute. Hey. Yes, okay, good. All right, good afternoon, everybody, once more. Like I said, we're looking at finding purpose in business today. And my guest, who is my mentor, and he's written a book around Bible MBA. It's written in a devotional format where you could actually get some Bible-based principles for running a business and understanding, finding purpose in your business and running it as much as you can in a way that aligns with how God would want you to do it. So, like I mentioned, he's my mentor. I call him Architect Wale. A lot of people call him that as well. And to me, I see him beyond just architect or structural architect, but also, I mean, he's a divine architect as well, to helping people discover their plans and working in the right way that it needs to be. So, without much ado, I would welcome him. He will be taking us. It would start the session in a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, just lay the foundation of the conversation today. Then afterwards, I'll be asking him some questions from that. And we're all welcome to send in our questions as well too. We'll also be taking questions from everyone. Hopefully in the next 90 minutes, this will all be over, but I'm sure that the impact that you get from today is something that will take you on for a lifetime. So welcome with me, Architect Wale. You're welcome, sir.
Hi, Dari. How you doing?
Yes, very good.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how have you been?
Very good, very good, very good. Enjoying the lockdown, staying gentle at home with my wife, doing as much work as we could do, and taking as much rest as we could take.
Oh, well, that's a good outcome. I mean, anything that makes us stay at home with family is a good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Nice to have you all here. Just to have a conversation around thinking of how to build businesses that think beyond just profits. I think we're going to have this conversation for about an hour. I'll expect that I'll just do a quick opening, and then Dario will lead us, with questions, and then we'll push it back and forth. And I imagine that there'll be an opportunity for everyone to get in a word now and then. Okay, so as a sort of intro.
Sorry, if you can push your device back a bit, it's cutting off your head, so.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, really? Hold on a second. Okay, I was trying to optimize for the microphone, but looks like the camera is priority.
Okay, but the microphone is fine still, yeah.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Yes, so welcome once again, everyone. Good to have you here on this conversation. And Dario wanted me to open by just talking around the concept of purpose and looking beyond profit as a business person. Now, let me be very clear, to say that if you're running a business, you need to think about profits, okay? You need to be making profits, okay? It is vital and important that a business makes profit. The way that I think about profit as a business person is the way that I think about food as a human being, okay? So as a human being, I need to eat food. I have need for food. If I'm going to be able to live from day to day and pursue the things that are important to me and achieve my goals and objectives, I am absolutely going to need to eat food on an ongoing basis. So for me, profit is to a company what food is to the human body. While you might establish a company for reasons other than making a profit, you're not going to be able to run a business on a sustainable basis except you're making profit. And so profit is not the purpose of the business, okay? It's not the correct purpose for setting up a business, but if you do not make profit, you're not going to have a business. So it's important for us to sort of get that established, from the word go, so that no one goes away with the wrong impression that, oh, there's something wrong with making profit, or as a business person, you really shouldn't be striving to make profit. You absolutely need to be striving to make a lot of profit as a business person. So I just put that on one side and then sort of pivot to what I'd really like to focus on in this introduction. The concept of purpose, okay? Now, I'm approaching all of this conversation from a Christian point of view. And I think even outside of the Christian faith, majority of people get the sense that there is a purpose for why you're here. You're not here by happenstance. You're not just here just because. So a good number of people get the sense that, oh, I'm here for a reason. I'm here at this point in time because of some sort of reason. But then if I then go further into how Christian views the concept of purpose, I'd like to use two examples very quickly. The first, or two scriptures. The very first one is a person that we all know as Paul, who started out his life as Saul. So Paul, who was Saul at the time that this happened, was traveling to Damascus, and his aim was to go and get a lot of people arrested who were new followers of Jesus, okay? And he wanted to go and have them arrested and throw them in jail. And then he gets this experience on his way to Damascus. And what we have recorded concerning that experience is that a light shines from heaven, and then Saul falls to the ground and the light blinds him. And then a voice from heaven says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And then Saul says, who is this? And the voice says, this is Jesus Christ, whom you're persecuting. And then the voice says to him, and this is very important, I'd like for you to pay attention to this. It says, it is a hard thing to kick against the pricks. Essentially, Jesus was saying to Saul that there's a path that I'd rather that you stay in. And when you go outside of that path, you're kicking against the pricks, you're kicking against thorns. So think of yourself walking on a path, and on either side of the path are thorn bushes. So there are lots of thorns, and you can't get outside of the path except you walk through thorns. You literally kick through thorns to be able to get out of the path. So Jesus was saying to Paul, I've got a plan for your life. This is a path on which I want you to walk. But if you choose not to, your life is going to be like kicking against thorns. Okay, so he says to him, it is a hard thing to kick against the thorns. And then Paul, or Saul at that time, asks a very, very important question. And he says, what will you have me do? Okay, what exactly is it that you'd rather I be doing than going down to Damascus right now and arresting a bunch of your followers and throwing them in jail? What is the purpose that you'd rather I be pursuing? So a Christian approaches purpose as the thing that God would rather that we were doing, the thing that he would prefer that we were pursuing, okay? Now, we can pursue 1,001 different things. And God is not necessarily going to jump down and say, oh, you stop right there. Or we're not necessarily going to get an experience like Saul got on the road to Damascus. But it doesn't change the reality that if you ask God, he has his preference about what direction he wants us to be charting in this life. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. The second thing that I wanted to point out is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 15. Now, let me just paraphrase what it says there. It says essentially that Jesus Christ died and was raised again, and that he died for a certain category of people, anyone who accepts that he died for them, that he died for them, right? And that if you accept that he died for you, then you no longer can live life for yourself. It says, but instead you must live life for him who died for you. So it's a sort of like a trading place. It's sort of like a swap. He goes to the cross for you. If you want to appropriate the value of his going to the cross for yourself, then you have to take his place in life. So he died so that those who live should no longer live unto themselves, but should live for him who died and was raised back to life for them. So if you look at those two scriptural references, Paul's experience and this very direct instruction that if you accept the death of Jesus Christ and his resurrection, that you no longer can live for yourself, then you have to ask yourself, as someone who believes in the veracity of the Bible, what are the implications of this for me as an individual, and the implications of this for how I lead or how I work in the business that I'm involved in or in the organization that I work. If I am no longer allowed to live for myself, if I have instead to live for the one who died for me, what are the implications of this? I'll take one last account of scripture and then I'll turn this over to Darius so you can get to specific issues and we can look at those, and perhaps look at a number of case studies. So yeah, there's a story in Genesis chapter 11 from around verse 1 to verse 4, and even longer, it goes further down. And a bunch of people decided that they were going to build a tower, and that tower was going to get to heaven, okay, basically. And then they were going to use asphalt and clay, that was the material they were going to use to build the skyscraper. And then God says, that essentially, oh, these guys are trying to build a skyscraper. And because they have a unity of purpose, they're in agreement about what they want to accomplish, no one is really going to be able to stop them from accomplishing it. Essentially, these guys are going to succeed, okay? And then God decides that he didn't want them to succeed in that venture because it wasn't going to achieve the purpose for which he created them. And this is how God puts it, okay? Or this is rather how we decipher that. When the guys said they were going to build a tower all the way to heaven, when they were going to build the skyscraper, the reason they gave for wanting to build a skyscraper is so they could make a name for themselves. I think I'm just going to open that portion and read it literally so that everyone is on the same page. It's in Genesis chapter 11 from verse 1. I'll just read up to verse 4. So it says, now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Now, there are two concerns. One, They wanted to make a name for themselves. And secondly, they didn't want to be scattered abroad all over the surface of the earth. Now, these two things were very contrary to God's plan for human beings. When God created Adam and Eve and put them in the garden, he wanted them to replenish the earth, basically to scatter and cover the face of the earth. Now here are these guys saying, we don't want to be spread to cover the face of the earth. So they were going contrary to God's plan. Secondly, God created us to glorify him. But these guys wanted to glorify and immortalize themselves. So they said, we want to make a name for ourselves. And so God says, well, neither of these two things are going to happen. So he came down and scattered their language. That's how the Bible says it. Basically, it broke the accord and the agreement that they had. And thereafter, they couldn't continue with that project. The point that I'm trying to lead us to by bringing up this account is to say we can be pursuing things that are not in God's plan for us. We can be capable of achieving those things because what the Bible says is that God said, these guys are going to succeed. The only thing that's going to stop them from succeeding is if I intervene. And so many times we're pursuing agendas, and some of them are really fantastic things, okay? I'm an architect, and so if a bunch of guys thought of building a skyscraper several millennia ago, if you ask me, I would have thought, oh, that's a brilliant thing to pursue. But as far as God was concerned, that wasn't a brilliant thing to pursue because the motives were entirely wrong, okay? So as business people and as people working within businesses, one question that we must constantly address if we are believers and we want to please God is, what are the motives driving the things that we're trying to achieve? And so when we discuss this evening, beyond profit, looking at the purposes of business, we're trying to pull back our minds to say, why don't you ask God what he would rather have you do? The same way Paul asked Jesus, said, what would you have me do? So this is a question that I'm hoping that when all of us, leave this conversation in another 45 minutes or thereabout, we'll be able to sit down and ask ourselves and ask God, what would you have me do? Dari, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to, one thing that I think it's always a lot of time, the challenge is that, I really want to do business to align with divine purpose. I really want to do business to align with God's purpose for me. But I've prayed about it. But how can I then be sure that this is the right thing? And I'm asking that, and I would appreciate if you can actually answer that question with kind of like with your story, in the sense that you are an architect. There are different ventures or different ways you could have been dealing with architecture, but you chose to say, okay, let's start up with co-build it and let's create affordable homes in a city where the high cost of something is how people judge, oh, that's really good. If it's luxury, then a lot of people want to buy it and all that. And you chose the path to say, well, we want to make affordable homes, but you're also making something that is unusual in the sense that it's affordable home, yet is of international standard. So of different options that you could have gone with a business, why this? How did you understand that this is what God's purpose is for you?
Okay, so one thing that everyone needs to understand about God is that Christianity is very countercultural. It's very counterintuitive. It's not something that you're going to just, it doesn't, it's completely different from what the direction that culture is going to try to lead you in. Culture is going to say, oh, try and get as much money as you can, okay? And if I were a business person and I was trying to get as much money as I can, the first category of people that I'm going to serve or attempt to serve is the wealthiest, right? They're the people who have money, okay? No one who wants a lot of money tries to go and serve people at the bottom of the pyramid, okay? But if you're approaching this from a Christian worldview, you're going to be asking yourself questions like, which category of people is the least served? Which is the underserved category of people and that needs the service that I'm offering? I cannot find some other way to get it, okay? So you see, for instance, the Bible says, or Jesus said that, oh, I didn't come, to help people who don't have need for a physician. I can't help people who have need for a physician, people who are really sick. So you're approaching business from a need point of view. Who needs this the most? And how can I build a business model to serve that need? Very often, people get it wrong by saying, how can I build a business model that allows me to make the most profits? Okay? I think the right way to approach it is, how can I find a need that I can help to fill? Okay? Are you going to make money filling a need? Oh, absolutely. The consensus today among the most forward-thinking management thinkers is that purpose-driven companies are some of the most sustainable and even more profitable companies. So it is not automatic that because you're trying to serve an underserved community that you're not going to make money. It's just that, you're going to probably do a lot more in terms of giving of yourself and in terms of how you design your product and all of that to be able to serve those communities. Many times what people are running away from is that extra effort that it takes to serve communities that are underserved.
Okay, good. So you talked about something in the direction of saying that it's not about what I'm going to make the most profits from this. It's around how am I going to serve the most need in this direction, and that's kind of like cross-cuts with something around. There's this blue ocean and red ocean strategy talking about the fact that you're not coming in there to just compete with what others are already doing. Look for who are the people that others are currently not serving and focus on create your own market. And there are thoughts like that too from books like Prosperity Paradox, talking about the fact that I know Christian, his name is always difficult for me to pronounce.
Christensen.
Yeah, and Efosa, Clayton of beloved memory, because I think he passed some few months ago. And he's a Christian as well, to push this thing around markets, creating innovation, looking at non-consumption. Who are the people who are not currently buying this product from others? So it's like you're not starting that business from the rationale of being a competitor, but rather being from the rationale of trying to solve a need. And that I'm going to tie with something you told me some time ago. And it was like, when I think I read you put it out somewhere, maybe on Twitter or WhatsApp or something around, and I was like, oh, and we had a conversation around it, was the fact that not looking your competitors as the competition, but rather considering them collaborators. That actually shifted something in my mind that I was like, okay, we have a lot of thoughts talking about how you can position and beat the competition and things like that. Yeah, you are saying, oh, don't look at the competitors as the competitors, but rather look at them as collaborators and look at the problem you are solving as the true competition. I just want you to shed a bit more light around that philosophy.
Okay, yeah, so every philosophy or worldview is based on certain premises, right? And what you're aiming to do is to find consistency within a worldview. If you jump to the end of a worldview and you don't look at the premise, you're probably going to say, this doesn't make any sense. But if you look at the thing in entirety, then you understand how it makes sense. So to speak specifically about how we view competition at Co-Build It. So we try to tell our people that other people who are doing real estate and building houses are not competition for us. And it's important to understand why I and we think so. Now, we are approaching the business as solving a problem, okay? If our objective is to solve a problem for a category of people, and we find someone else trying to solve that problem, okay? And if in our hearts of hearts, our true objective is to solve the problem for the category of people and potentially be rewarded for solving it, and we're not focused on the reward, if our focus is on solving the problem, if someone else comes along to help us to solve that problem, they cannot really be competition. They're actually collaborators. And the sort of pedestrian way that I describe it is, if someone's car, maybe your friend's car got just parked up on the road, and back in the days we used to push cars to start. We don't do that anymore. But if someone's car parked up on the road and you needed to push it to start, if you start to push the car and someone joins you to push the car, you don't think of that person as a competitor. you think of the person as a collaborator because you're focused on solving the problem. Now, you start to think of that person as competition if you're doing it primarily because of the reward that the car owner is going to give you. And so you start to think, okay, this guy probably has only 50 naira or 500 naira to give. If this guy joins me, then that 500 naira, because it is finite, is going to be split between more than one person, and then my ultimate share is less. Then you start to think of the person as competition, okay? But the paradigm on which our business is based is that there is limitless opportunity, okay? And that we're serving people who have needs. And that anyone who's coming to join that market to solve that problem is a collaborator. And we don't think that the resources that we're going to get as reward is finite. And so we have to be concerned about what they're going to get out of what we were supposed to get. So that's not, a primary thought for us.
Yeah, so am I still on mute? Okay. Yeah, so now trying to stretch that a little bit more. Now is the sense that, okay, I know that I'm not doing this business primarily for the profit, but looking at our finances in the business, we know that we have maybe 5 to 10 employees. We make this much money, and this is how to cover our cost, salaries, and our personal needs and things like that. Now somebody else has come to solve this same problem, but a number of our existing customers are now divided in this direction. Now we need to get more customers. So how do we balance that strive there of saying, oh, I'm not making more effort to make more from the rationale of competing with this person, but from the rationale of making sure that we are making, like you said from the beginning, you need to make profits in the business. So some customers are out, our profit is reducing. We need to, I'm doing more now to get more people to grow our profit, but not necessarily doing it out of a mindset of competing with the other person. How do one balance that approach? That's you're doing to get more, but you're not doing to compete.
Okay, so this is a very interesting question. And again, I've talked about the consistency of the paradigm. So first of all, we think that if the size of the problem is shrinking, okay, because that's what we're describing. The size of the problem is shrinking because you're solving it and someone else is solving it. It then means that the number of people that you have hired trying to solve that problem will probably have less to do. Okay, you're going to have to go back and ask yourself, oh, is our purpose changing? Because if we had all of these people for this purpose, and that, the scope of that activity has reduced, should we be looking at something else to do? Okay, that's on one hand. On the other hand, if you're a purpose-driven company and you're thinking always and every time about the customer, your goal ultimately, people design business models around freemium, okay? So your goal ultimately is to find a way to transfer your operating costs to some other people, okay, who benefit from you solving that problem, okay? Many times when you're solving problem at the bottom of the pyramid, and I need to say that this is not an exclusively Christian approach to doing business. So you probably heard of Mohammed Yunus, the guy who started the Grameen Bank around India and Pakistan, okay? It's called Banker to the Poor, Mohammed Yunus. And his theory of change was that the way to get poverty to reduce in his community was to empower women. And the way to empower women was to give them micro loans so they could do their businesses. At that time, and even our own reality right now in Nigeria is that everybody thinks that the people to give loans to are the big corporates, okay? Banks don't finance small businesses in Nigeria. The only people who finance small businesses in Nigeria are Shylocks, okay? The people who run microfinance banks, and they're charging interest rates sometimes as high as 10% per month. So if you annualize that, you're asking someone to pay you 120% interest rate. And you're saying you're a microfinance bank trying to help the poor. You're clearly not trying to help anyone, okay? So we need to constantly go back to our premises and say, oh, should we remain in this business? Has this problem been solved? Should we be doing something else? Is this all there is for us in terms of purpose, or we need to be pivoting or realigning, or are we supposed to expand our offering? So there are many ways in which you're able to generate revenue. Right now, for instance, as a company, we're doing a number of thoughts around expanding our offering, because again, when you start out solving a problem and you stick with solving that problem, you begin to gain competencies in solving other problems. I'll give you an example. I think UPS has a logistics consulting business. Now, they didn't start as a logistic consulting business. They started out doing logistics, right?
Yeah.
But then over time, they began to develop these competencies that added to so much institutional memory that they say, oh, we've got to find a way to provide this as a service to people who need it. We have done logistics so well, and we now know logistics so well that all that knowledge cannot go to waste. So if you find out that the market size is shrinking in the primary place where you started off, perhaps God is trying to shift your attention to new competencies that you have developed and that He wants you to deploy into the market and be able to create additional value.
Oh, okay, interesting. So in other words, you look at it rather than to increase your own market share, so to say, you're not looking to steal from other people's share, rather you're looking to grow the pie. I mean, there's this book I was listening to the podcast the other day, and it was talking about the fact of grow the pie, right? Rather than think I want to get more percentage, why not think about it that this thing can grow for everybody? And I'm increasing, everybody is increasing. But if there is no more room for one to increase in that space, perhaps it's time to look in a different direction. And that pretty much really ties on to one of the things I teach a lot these days. So I started out a career in project management. I'm gradually moving in the direction of agile project management. So working currently as an agile coach. And the whole concept of business agility is really relating to businesses being responsive to change. Right? Mm-hmm. Don't just remain stuck in your old ways. And being it's not about, oh, we are responding to change, but actually, is it ingrained in the culture? Have you structured the organization in such a way that people can learn very quickly and move on? Have you built a culture of continuous learning and things like that? And so all that now is bringing me to the next question that I want to talk about, where you we're having this conversation the other day. You mentioned something around not using people, but building people. That you're in business, the people that you've employed in your business are not just resources for you to use to serve more people and make more money and all that, but rather you should, as much as they are working with the organization, they should be growing in the process as well. So I just want you to expand a little bit on that as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's good that just sort of harking back to Efosa's book, which you mentioned, about creating and expanding the market, and not focusing on what is, but, asking what can be. And then to just go on to this question which you're asking, how you treat people within the context of an organization. So again, I said earlier on that Christianity is countercultural, right? And classical economics views people as one of the factors of production. Okay, it's just one of the factors. Put them right beside capital and land. Okay, so it's land, capital, and labor. Some later revisions of the theory include entrepreneurship. Okay, they define entrepreneurship as a factor on its own. But the point is that how is it that you put people just right next to land and capital? I think people are a completely different part of the process of creating value, okay? And if you just relegate them to a factor of production, you're probably not going to do right by people. There are many examples in scripture that I can use for how, people treat people and how that is counterproductive. I'll give you an example. When children of Israel were in Egypt, in slavery, right? One time they increased their quota of production. And they said, we're not going to give you additional materials, but we expect you to deliver more results. Okay? There are organizations that treat people like that. They don't give them the tools and the training they need to be able to deliver, but they want the results. Those are not businesses, those are slave camps, right? You're not treating people right if you don't give them the tools that they need and you expect them to produce results for you. Now, the number one way, the number one objective for me in leading the company that I lead is to make the people who work with me become friends. Now, the reason I say this is, so when Jesus was leaving the earth and it was sort of getting close to the time when he was going to be crucified, he gathered his disciples and said, you know, guys, you know what? That's in John 17. He said, you know what, guys? I'm no longer going to call you servants. I'm going to call you friends. You know, and someone would probably think, but that's just semantics. What's the difference? Servants. Oh, there's a huge difference, right? Because in John chapter 10, it says that there's a difference between a shepherd and a hireling or a servant. That a servant, when he's looking after the sheep and there's some threat, maybe a lion shows up or a bear shows up, it says the hireling is going to run and leave the sheep. Okay? The hireling is going to basically say to the sheep, you're on your own. He's not committed. He's not, going to go the extra mile. But a friend, on the other hand, the Bible says, greater love hath no man, but that a man should lay down his life for his friends. So the level of commitment that you get from friends, you've got friends. The level of commitment that your friends have to your welfare is different from the level of commitment that someone who you just hire, maybe someone you hire to do your lawn, is going to have an entirely different perspective to how. So, for instance, if someone was going to attack you, your friend is likelier to come to your defense than someone you hired to do your lawn. He's probably going to think, hey, I don't have a dog in this fight. I better just, give way. So Jesus says to them, I'm going to call you friends going forward. I'm no longer going to call you servants. And the reason he was doing that was because he wanted them to have a different perspective and a different approach to managing the assignment he was now going to commit to their hands. If we want people to manage the business in a way that we will be happy with, we have to treat them more than just hirelings. We have to treat them beyond just people that we pay to do a job. We have to make sure that they're excited to come to work every morning and that they take the business as their own. And this doesn't happen automatically, okay? And people can see through our hypocrisy if we're just whining them in order to make them do what we want. They can see through all of that. There are things that we must do. There's a sense of ownership that people must feel that they have in order to be able to take the business as something that belongs to them.
Interesting. So on that note still, I know you were talking the other day around some things with your team, how you were able to, I just wanted to talk a bit around how you're able to build that continuous learning culture within the organization, encourage, you have like a quarter of their income available for them to learn more. And contrary to what a lot of organizations do, to say, if we've spent this much on your training, you have to sign the bond because you're not leaving until a certain time and all that. And you do something different around that. But what I want to ask is that, how does that still make economic sense really for the business? Sometimes you spend a lot of money training some people and you don't even tie them down. So because you spent this much on your master's degree, you have to be with us for another 6 months or 1 year. So I just wanted to talk a bit about that.
So I think fundamentally, a business decides what its priorities are, okay? For us, our priorities are people, okay? And we're happy to make any sort of investment that is required in our people. It's a key performance indicator for us. Profit ranks very low. It is an essential, it is a necessity. I'd like to reiterate so that no one goes away with the wrong impression that we're not out there to make a profit. We absolutely are out there to make a profit. But it ranks low when we compare it with our prioritizing people. And I think that the best investment you can make in people is to just treat them like people, okay? And sometimes that investment will yield a return. Sometimes it will not yield a return.
We lost the sound from your end. Hello?
Can you hear me, Larry?
Yeah, we can hear you now, but we lost you at some point, so we've missed some of the things you said.
Okay. I'm just trying to go over what I was saying again. So I was saying that we consider investing in people a priority for us. And we think it as just any other investment that you make in this life. Every investment has an element of risk, okay? And in whatever kind of investment, sometimes investments go good, sometimes they go bad, okay? Sometimes you're going to invest in people and they're not going to justify that investment. Some other times, you're going to invest in people and they're going to justify that investment. But you see, we have an extra incentive for investing in people, okay? Beyond the immediate returns that those people give to us as a business. And that extra incentive is that we know that when we treat people well, we sow a seed and we get a reward for that seed, okay? Jesus Christ, you know, some guys met him. So time travel, Jesus Christ said, on that day, some people are going to come to me and say, oh, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you naked? When did we see you, you know, having a need and we didn't try to meet your need? And then he says, I'm going to say to them, well, when you treat people badly, you're actually treating me badly. And when you treat people well, you're actually treating me well, okay? So that's the extra layer of incentive that we have for treating people well. That even if we don't make a return on that investment in this life, we get a huge return on investment in the next one. Again, I'd like to just reiterate that.
We've lost the sound again. We can't hear you. Hello?
Hi, Larry.
Yes, it's ceased again for a while.
Again. Okay, can you just point me to what I was saying when it went off?
Yeah, you're talking about in this life, the scriptures about, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the point that I was making was that we have an extra incentive for treating people right, beyond whether they come back to the business, you know, and help the business to grow, or whether they repay the kindness that the organization tries to treat them with. We have ultimately an extra incentive that has nothing to do with this reality and this time. So that also is, so we don't think that we're losing an investment if we help someone or support someone and they don't repay the kindness in the immediate.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask the next question around how do you, and I know that this is something that a lot of people listening would like to understand, like today, starting a business, the concept of having co-founders and partners is becoming more and more common. And I'm going to ask this question 2 in 1, actually. And the first part of the question is that how do you ensure, I mean, like the sticky notes I have behind me, it's one of my keywords driving me this year is alignment. So like I'm always checking to say, okay, whatever I'm doing part-time, how does this align with what God wants me to be doing really right now? And okay, so back to my question. How do you ensure that you have the right, you've discovered that, okay, this business I'm doing, this is in line with divine purpose for what I need to do. How do you ensure as well so that whosoever you are partnering with or that you're bringing as co-founders, you both have that alignment? So it's not like for you, it's a purposeful business, but for the other person, it's just another profit-driven venture. And then when you're trying to say, oh, let's do this, more of this, the person is saying, no, 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 let's do more of that because we need to make money and things like more money and things. So how do you ensure that you are both in alignment to make sure that the reason we're doing this business is purpose-driven? And the second part of the question is that, and I'm asking that because some of these sessions I've been doing, one keyword behind it at the end of me is how can we experience more trust in business? Yeah. So the next question on that side is going to be around, now you found the right person, you are in alignment and all that. How do you do things to make sure that there is trust in that business, both amidst the co-founders, even with employees, and even in extension to customers?
Okay, so it's a two-in-one question.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. Oh, no, not again. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I'll take the first question.
Yeah.
Okay. The first question is, how do you find alignment, or how do you find people that you align with? Okay. So the first thing, in finding alignment is to know where you stand yourself. Okay. You have to have convictions. Okay. Now, Amos 3:3 says, can two people work together if they don't have agreement? Or if they don't have alignment, okay? They clearly can't. Two people are not going to be able to travel very far if they don't find alignment. The first thing that you need to do, if you're thinking about this, is what are your own convictions? You need to be sure about that, okay? Because it is your convictions that act as a filter for you to decide who else you can travel with. So you need to put down your convictions about the big questions that will come up in a business, the ethical issues, how you're going to treat people, what sort of things you're willing to do or not do, and all of that. There's a scripture in 2 Corinthians, I think, that talks about being unequally yoked, okay? Now, I grew up doing a bit of farming, and I remember that a yoke is a farming implement, right? And it is something that you put across two bulls so that you can plow your field. Now, the two bulls that you use to plow need to be relatively same size if your yoke is going to work properly. Now, if you put a very large sized bull and a very tiny sized bull, and you try to put a yoke across the two of them, the story is not going to end well. So you've got to find people that sort of share the convictions that you have about business, okay? But going past that, you need to also make up your mind that irrespective of how things turn out, you're going to take the high road. And I'd like to use a biblical, example to illustrate this. So remember Abraham and Lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Abraham got an idea to launch out. God told him, leave your people and your kindred and go to a land that I'm going to show you. And Abraham thought, it'd be good to take a co-founder along. And he said, Lot, you know what? Let's go and start a business. Okay? So it takes Lot and they head out. And then after a while, business starts to boom. Okay? I mean, they were doing really, really well. And then the herdsmen of Lot began to strive with the herdsmen of Abraham. So basically, they were contesting for opportunities. When the herdsmen of Lot are looking for pasture and water to feed the animals, they encountered the herdsmen of Abraham. And it was starting to become a problem. Sort of like contesting market share with someone, okay, who started out with you as co-founder, in a sense. So how did Abraham sort of deal with this issue? So in our context, you're probably going to say, I brought you along. I started this business. I asked you to join me. Now you're trying to kick me off of the ground and all of those sort of things. Abraham didn't take that approach. Abraham said, Lord, you know what? I don't think we really should be quarreling about pasture. Okay? Here's what I'm suggesting. You take a look at all of the opportunities around us. Okay? And I want you to decide which of them you want to keep. And when you've taken what you want, I'll make do with what is left. Okay? So that is a Christian approach to dealing with trouble when they come, if they come. So first of all, start out by making sure you're launching out with someone with shared convictions. But even on that journey, if things go south, how do you then deal with issues? Is to deal with it the way Abraham always dealt with issues. And let me tell you why Abraham responded that way to Lot. So remember again when Abraham went out and retrieved, Lot and all of the property of the king of Sodom. After Lot had taken the best parts and grown his business, and then his business went into trouble. And then Abraham had to bail him out, okay? So Abraham went after these guys who had come to take Lot and all of the people of Sodom. And Abraham brought them back. And then the king of Sodom said to Abraham, you know what? Just give me the people and then you can take all the goods. For us, many times that'll be like, oh, fantastic opportunity. I'm getting back all the things.
Okay. Okay, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, so for many of us, we would have thought, oh, this is a fantastic opportunity to get back everything that Lot took from me and more, okay? But what was Abraham's response to the king of Sodom? Was like, you know what? I don't want any of this. And the reason I don't want any of this is because I have lifted up my hands to the King of heaven, okay? Abraham knew that, he had a connection with God, and God was going to have his back covered, and he didn't need to strive to get anything from anyone else, okay? And you will see Abraham transfer that same mindset to Isaac, so that when Isaac took over the business, and then the people in the surrounding areas were struggling with him for all of the wells that Abraham had dug. So think of these wells as, business units that Abraham had established, okay? And then there were people trying to take over these business units. And the Bible says that when they come and strive with Isaac, Isaac will leave that one and go and dig another one. So his father had built this empire for him. And then people came and said, oh, you know what, we're going to sue you. This is ours and all of that. Isaac says, you know what, you guys can have it. And then he goes on and digs another well. Because Abraham was carrying the blessing and he passed on the blessing to Isaac. So Isaac knew that the thing that I have inside is what produced
Okay.
That fails, you can still go ahead and respond as a Christian, not as someone who needs to strive.
Okay, good. All right, on the next part of the question, in terms of ensuring trust amidst your partners, your employees, and your customers.
Oh yeah. So I missed that out. I think trust is something that you give at first, okay, until someone proves themselves untrustworthy, okay? And one of the ways to promote trust is to be transparent. Be transparent. If you have a co-founder, it's important for everything to be transparent between you and your co-founders, that you're not doing anything behind them, okay? And that you're also making sure that they have, if it's an equal shareholding, then you're treating them as equals. If you have more of the shareholding, that you're giving them the level of respect and responsibility that is due to the amount of shareholding that they have. So I think that the key word for building trust is that there must be transparency. Wherever there's no transparency, there's always suspicion and there's always possibility of doing something wrong.
Oh, very good, very good. Transparency. So, I mean, also looking to employees as well, to ensuring as much transparency as possible, and the same thing to customers. So I have two more questions, and after that, we'll be taking questions from everyone. If you have any questions at this point, you can start sending your question in so we can pick it up first come, first answered. So the two questions I just have now is, the first question here is that, how do one rethink the place of culture and branding within an organization, and to make sure that, yeah, this is our purpose, and we're not just designing any culture for the sake of having a culture, but we're ensuring that the culture that we have within our organization is in alignment with the purpose that we are pursuing, and the same thing with our brand representation as well too. Yeah. And so let's answer that, and after that I come up with the last question. Yeah.
Okay, when it comes to question of culture, I like to quote Peter Drucker.
Your sound is gone again. Hello? Hello?
Okay, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, yes.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying that when it comes to culture, one of my favorite quotes is Peter Drucker's quote, and it says, "Culture will eat strategy for breakfast." Basically, that, if you don't have the right culture, every strategy will fail. Okay, culture is what your people wake up and do every day. It's what they do when you're there and when you're not there. It's how the organization responds to stimuli. It's how you just get along, okay? And ultimately, that's the most important way to get performance. If you don't have the right culture, you can't have performance as an organization. Now, here are three things that I think every culture can benefit from, every organizational culture. Here are three things I think you can benefit from. The first one is that your people must be ethical, okay? Your people must be ethical. If you're not ethical, it will show up in the long run. You may get a few wins early on, but in the long run, it will come back to bite you. So think of a global corporate giant like Enron. Enron crumbled in the early 2000s because of ethical issues. Look at how big that company was, but if you have the wrong ethical culture within an organization, it will ultimately catch up with the organization. More recently, you're familiar with the story of Theranos.
Yeah.
And it was ethics. Okay. So the first thing that you need to get right, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to build
Okay. Hello, you back?
Yeah, I am. I just turned on video in case that was what was causing the problem. So
okay.
Second thing that I think is critical for culture is that people must go the extra mile.
Okay.
People, you must create, a culture of people doing the extra. Okay, constantly pushing the envelope. The thing is that when you get complacent, you're actually starting to die, okay? When a company gets complacent, the company is starting to die. There are many, many global examples of companies that got complacent and they were leapfrogged by people who were coming behind them, okay? Companies like IBM, even though now they've pivoted to cloud, but at some point they were hardware, computer business. And they got very complacent, and companies like Dell came and began to solve problems. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Someone was unmuted, sir.
Okay, and companies like Dell came and began to solve problems in the way that people wanted it solved, okay? So the first thing is you must have a very strong ethical foundation. The second thing is you must always push yourselves to go the extra mile. So the organization needs to have that as culture. People cannot be complacent, okay? They can't make do with what was okay yesterday. They need to continue to push the envelope and say, what is the best thing for where we're going to, not where we're coming from, okay?
Okay, yeah.
The third thing is empathy. And I've spoken extensively about this, how you treat people, empathy. You know, if a company, no matter how fantastic their products are in the short term, if they start to treat their people badly, everything is going to go downhill ultimately. So if you want to have a culture that is sustainable, that continues to enable you to win every day in the market, it needs to have these three components: thriving and doing very well.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. There's a part of the question around the brand of the organization as well. So yeah. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
Hello?
I said, I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Said there's a what?
As I was saying that there's a part to the question around branding as well too, that how do you ensure that the brand representation of the organization is in accordance with what your purpose is?
Okay, so I think branding is something that ought to flow out of your reality, not necessarily something that is superimposed on what is real within the organization. And I'll tell you why. You see, you can hire a PR company to create the most amazing brand representation out there in the market. But ultimately, your brand is what people have come to know about the company when they engage with you. Yeah. So, for instance, I'll give you one classic example. You used to live in Nigeria, so you probably had encountered Nigerian police a number of times.
Yes.
Right? Did you come away feeling that these people were friendly people?
No, not really.
Okay, is there anyone on the call who has the sense that Nigerian police is a very friendly organization? If there's anyone, you can just type your response. But my suspicion is no one on this call thinks that Nigerian police is a very friendly organization.
They are terrible people.
Okay, so but you see, the tagline of the Nigerian police is "the police is your friend." Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Derek.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so the tagline of the Nigerian police is "the police is your friend." Are you able to reconcile that with your experience of the police? I'm sure the answer is no, okay? So we can't approach branding from the point of view, oh, let's get some real nice PR company to do some really snazzy logo for us, and do some very good communication for us and all of that, and then that's our brand. That's not your brand. Your brand is what people think when they encounter your organization. When you provide people a service or a product, your brand is the impression that they get. So my goal as a business leader is to focus on being very good at what we do. That's not to say that we're not going to have very snazzy corporate, communications material. But I'm saying the emphasis is building the right culture so that when people experience our culture, they form an opinion of the brand by themselves, okay? And I give you, the biblical basis for how we approach this. Jesus says of the Pharisees that they are like whitened sepulchres. On the outside, they're nicely decorated. They're painted white and it looks beautiful. It says, but the inside is full of dead men's bones. Okay? So on the outside, the brand messaging is fantastic. But the reality behind that, wall of messaging is dead men's bones. Okay? So we ought not to be building organizations that hire PR companies to give us a very nice, image, and then our culture is really rotten.
Yeah. Okay. So before I get to my last question, you said something there about the Nigerian police, and that's a very classical example. And let's say you're running a business and you've gotten into this quagmire state of situation. You're trying to push a brand that the police is your friend, but that it's the opposite that people believe. How do you now rework such an arrangement? Let's still using the Nigerian police as an example. What will now be a right brand representation for them? So what should that statement read while they are trying to work around it to make it better?
So I think you can have an aspirational brand representation. You can say to people,
Okay.
this is what we want to be.
Okay.
Without necessarily saying that's what you are. Okay.
Okay.
But I think that the most sustainable long-term way to change the image of an organization in the minds of people is to change the organization. So recently, sticking with the example of the Nigerian police, recently I saw a picture on social media, I think on Twitter, of the Nigerian police going to help some guy during the lockdown whose wife was pregnant. And because it was during the lockdown in Lagos, there was no way to get to the hospital. This guy ran outside and he saw some policemen and he spoke to them, and they took the police patrol vehicle and took him to the hospital and all of that. And they posted that on social media. Now, if a bunch of us as Nigerians get that experience with the Nigerian police, we will be the first ones giving them word of mouth, endorsements. And that's what will ultimately change the brand perception.
Okay.
So I agree that you can have an aspirational brand, but you have to clearly be working towards it. And you need to be able to show very clearly to people examples of how you're working towards it.
Okay. All right. That makes it really very clear there. And what I can reiterate from that part is the understanding that as you work towards your brand, the efforts that you make, the things that you do, try to tell that story. Because if the Nigerian police has done that they've done, and there are so many other good things they would have done like that, but if they don't tell that story, a lot of people would not see that side of them. They would just be believing the other story that they encounter. So in essence, in business, the things you do in line with your brand aspiration, as much as possible, make every effort to tell your story around that. And I have this wonderful friend, Lamide Johnson, who trains a lot of business on how to tell their story, because it's very important that if you're not telling your own story, people will be getting the perception that they want. And that ties back to what you were saying earlier, sir, around transparency, because if you are open about what you were doing, if you do the right thing, you will have that freedom to be open about it, to tell everybody about what you do. And then they will be able to see you in that light, see you in that perspective. That's, I really appreciate that. So my final question, we've already got some questions in and we'll be picking them right now. But my final question is, and this is from one of the quotes from the Devotional Bible MBA. I'm just going to say this to everyone as well, so that if you can get to YouVersion app to get that Bible MBA devotional. It's a 50-day devotional. I've read the book itself. I read the devotional again. I've completed it on my birthday, which is like 1 week ago. So that was very timely, completing that devotional then. It's very refreshing, very refreshing. It's called the Bible MBA. So maybe I would try to search for the link and paste it in the chat window as well, so we can get to it straight. So my final question here, which came out from that devotional, is understanding what is the single most important metric to measure the growth of your business. We talk a lot about growing business, but many times growth sometimes is seen in the direction of business. Oh, thank you. So the link has been pasted. You can get the devotional through that link. So a lot of time we think of growth, we are thinking, how much money have we made? How much more people have we employed and things like that. As much as those things are important, but what should be the single most important metric for people measuring their business when they are thinking about purpose?
So it's hard to put one's finger on the single most important one, to be fair. Okay. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
But from my point of view, I think our ultimate and biggest successes is our success in changing people. Okay. It's not our success in building great edifices and all of that. It's our success in impacting and influencing and changing people. So the way that I would ultimately measure the success of my business it's not how much ultimately I get out of it. I know Jeff, there's a lot of brouhaha now about Jeff potentially become a trillionaire in a couple of years.
Wow.
I'm not even keeping score, of how much we're ultimately going to make. I mean, not in the sense that that's a major pursuit. It's not a major pursuit. It's a byproduct of the work that we do and the value that we create. So, but the things that are important for me as I run this, course of building a business is how much impact we have, number one, on the people who work within our business, what sort of influence we're able to exert in terms of how we're able to get them to see life differently, the culture that we're trying to establish within the organization. And then ultimately the people that we're serving, do we ultimately solve the problems that we set out to solve for them? So I'm looking at people, okay? People is my number one metric all the time. How what we do impacts people. And if that is on the balance of things, if that is good or if it is bad. So for instance, how can someone who wants to start a tobacco company apply that sort of paradigm, to their business? So you're going to ask yourself, so I start this tobacco company and we get on Forbes list as the most capitalized company in the world and all of that. But then I'm also responsible for all the people who have lung cancer. So we're looking, first of all, at the impact of what we do on people, okay? So all of our products, all of our services, and the culture that we build within the organization and that spills over when we engage with our customers. How do we impact people? And then second, really, we use all of the other metrics. Are we growing? Are we making money? Is our lives more comfortable? Can my people buy homes and buy cars for themselves and all of those sort of things?
Yeah. Interesting. I love that. Always trying to make sure that our metrics is around the people. So, and it's looking at it, the people that work with us, the people that we serve, which are the reason why we are in business anyway. There's this quote I've used. It's come up a lot in my courses that I teach. And his name is not coming to me now. Walmart, I think, and he was saying that there is only one boss. I'm not sure he's the person now, that there's only one boss, the customer, and he can fire everybody. So understanding that the people that we are in business for, we should really be thinking, how is this really impacting their life? Because at the end of the day, the place of defining our purpose in business, a lot of times starts from the people that we want to serve. Who are the people that we are trying to serve? And what is the problem we are trying to solve for them? I mean, I think some months ago, I was teaching I was speaking in an event, and I was there to help people understand, to discover their why. And while I was meditating on what to use as a framework to discuss that, what came to mind then was John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And I was able to come up with a framework around it there to say that in that John 3:16 was more like God's own purpose statement introducing his mission to us, so that we also should be able to say that, okay, for that is so loved this category of people that I give. So in the case of God giving Jesus as the solution, we should be able to state that solution, and also as it states in that scripture as well, to state what exactly is the problem we are solving. That scripture says that they will not perish. We should state the problem that we are solving, and we also should be able to talk about what exactly is the value that we deliver at the end of the day. And measuring that value, how it's impacting lives, as you've said, is something that is very, very important. So whatever business it is that we're into, and I love, even though very funny, that example of a tobacco company to say, measuring the impact on people.
Let me add one example.
Okay.
So the example of the tobacco company will seem very obvious. Most people can get that, tobacco is bad, it's bad. But there are many businesses that are bad, that are good in themselves, but then sometimes the decision-making process doesn't think about the people that they're serving, okay? So very recently, Boeing had a series of crashes of one of their aircrafts, and, investigations showed that they basically rushed through the process of getting that aircraft into the air, and that they didn't think ultimately about the safety of the people. that were going to be flying those planes. And they were more concerned instead about getting that aircraft into the market and into the air. So you find that there are businesses that are inherently good, in quotes, but then still have a bad decision-making process that doesn't prioritize the impact of their products on people. So we can apply this to many other businesses that we're involved with that are inherently good, but then sometimes we just overlook how important it is to prioritize people.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So let's start taking questions now. I have a question here that I love so much. It says, how do you marry your life purpose with the purpose for your business? Are they, these two things, are they the same thing? Can you draw a line between them?
So I think that, first of all, we have a purpose for life, and then business can be an extension of that purpose. There's no way that God will say, this is what I want you to do with your life. And if business is not part of it, then you're going to go and start a business and say you're working in purpose, right? If, for instance, God says, I want you to be a missionary or a doctor and all of that, you're probably going to find yourself going in that direction rather than meddling at all with business. Except if, for instance, God says, or God is leading you to become, say, a medical doctor, and then you start a hospital. That's a business, right? Okay, so that's an extension of your purpose. Okay, a business can be a vehicle for you to live out your purpose. Now that's one dimension. The other dimension that I think is important to mention as it relates to business is that there are people who set up businesses in order to be able to live their purpose. And the business is not their primary purpose. So the example is Paul the Apostle. So Paul was supposed to be an apostle to the Gentiles. But his personal principle was that he didn't want to live off of the gospel. Okay? Now, he had a right to live off of the gospel for the church to support his ministry and his travels and all of that. But he said, no, that's not what I want. Okay? I want to be able to bring the gospel at no cost to you. Okay? So what he said he was going to do was, I'm going to set up a business, if you like, a side hustle. So Paul had a side hustle. He used to be a tent maker, and he would make tents so he can make money so he could pursue his purpose. So that's some other direction that some people will have to explore depending on what their purpose is and what resources they need in order to be able to pursue that purpose.
Oh, okay, interesting. So to stretch that particular question a little bit more, let's look at it in the dimension of this is my purpose, but I know I'm not looking to start a business, but even in my career, how do I ensure that there is alignment between the career path that I go on and my purpose as an individual?
Yeah, so I think this is important for us, and we owe it to ourselves to spend our lives, in the center of God's will for our lives, okay? Remember that scripture that I shared earlier on? It's actually in Acts chapter 9. I think around verse 4, 5, 6 there about the scripture about Saul going to Damascus and having this encounter. So the question that the Lord asked Saul at that point is, why are you kicking against the pricks? Don't you know that that's a difficult thing to do? Okay. Essentially, Jesus was saying, I've got a plan for your life. I want you to walk in this path. And when you try to walk outside of the path, on the edge of the path is a thorn bush, and you're going to be kicking against pricks, against thorns and all of that. And so for us as believers, when we find out that we're pursuing a course other than what God wants us to pursue, it's a hard time going. You find out that no matter how successful you may be in pursuing that course, you really never get the satisfaction of success. And ultimately, there's one thing that every believer ought to work for, and that is to hear the Lord say on that last day, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Yeah. That's the thing that you're working for. That's final, well done. You did what I wanted you to do. You accomplished what I wanted you to accomplish. So it's important to constantly ask the Lord, like Saul did in that encounter, what will you have me do? What would you have me do? And to wait to get answers about that. Now, there are a lot of ways that we sort of know if God is leading us in a certain direction. That's not what we're focusing on in this conversation. But there are a number of tests that you can, put in place to know if God is leading you in a certain direction. Are you with me, Dari?
Yes, yes.
So I'll probably just highlight 2 or 3 of them, and hopefully you can pick up the rest from other sources and get direction. The number one thing is God is not going to lead you contrary to what he has written in his word. So God is not going to lead anyone to become an armed robber, for instance, because it is not, it hasn't, written that as something that anyone should do. It actually says that is something we should not do. So God is not going to lead you outside of his word. That's number one thing. Number 2 is that if God leads you, you're going to have peace about it. Okay? God leading you. Ultimately, you're going to have peace about it. Now, having peace about it doesn't mean that it's going to be a nice thing and all of that. You're going to love it and all of that. Actually, many times, the things that God leads us to do, we're saying, why don't you just let me do that other thing? It's more convenient for me. I like it better, and all of that. But ultimately, you're going to have peace about a thing that is leading you to do. Rick Warren also shared one thing that I'd be happy to share here. He said, we need to look at how God shaped us in order to understand where he's leading us. Okay. So sort of like the giftings, the talents that you have, the burdens and the impressions that you have, and all of those sort of things. I'll look for a link to that message by Rick Warren, and I'll post it, and you can check it out. Very great message on how to figure out what God is asking you to do.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know I was hoping that we'd finish this session at 5:30, but we still have like 2 more questions. So I'll just crave our indulgence, please. You just take an extra 5-10 minutes, but it won't be more than 10 more minutes beyond that 5:30. Please. We started slightly behind schedule as well. Yeah. So, okay. So 2 more questions here. There's a question that says, you mentioned something about we seeing our competitors as collaborators. If sincerely we are solving the same need and not necessarily the reward, how can one effectively make his competitors his collaborators? Because I think the essence of competitors is to enable you improve and step up on your business.
Yeah, so I think competition helps us to improve what we're doing. That's correct. Okay, even though I think we can, if you're leading the pack, you're probably not going to get anyone, triggering you to improve. You're probably going to try to outdo yourself. So one of the things that I mentioned as part of a great corporate culture is that you must go the extra mile. You must push. So you must be able to drive yourself to improve, whether there's competition or there's no competition. Now, as to how we can. Hello?
Yeah, yes. Someone keep coming off mute and the sound is distracting, yeah. Okay.
As to how we can make our competition collaborators, the first thing you need to deal with is how you see them, okay? If you see someone as someone helping you, your disposition towards them is going to be completely different than if you saw them as someone trying to take your lunch. Okay? So first of all, you need to deal with how you view them. When you're done dealing with how you view them, then you find opportunities to collaborate, okay? Sometimes it's because the problems we're trying to solve are too inconsequential and too small. That's why we see everybody as competition. When you're trying to solve a problem that is the size of the problem that we're trying to address, you can't really be bothered too much about what other people are trying to do. And let me sort of try to give you a concrete way to look at that. So the housing deficit in Nigeria is put at around 22 million units, right? Now, on the average, all of the development that goes on in Nigeria on an annual basis does not cross the 100,000 unit mark.
Wow.
So how am I supposed to be looking at people who are building another 200 units, another 500? How am I supposed to be looking at them as competition when the gap between what all of us are doing, 100,000, and the need is like 21 million units? So sometimes people are trying to solve a problem that is so tiny, or they are operating in a market that is so saturated, and which they probably shouldn't be operating in at all in the first place. You know, the thing in Nigeria is everybody likes to join the bandwagon. So if everybody's doing fintech now, everybody goes to fintech. Okay? Ultimately, in a short while, the market is saturated and everybody is trying to outdo one another. Now, one other thing that's missing in our environment is the willingness for people to come together, find alignment, and merge their businesses. People are always wanting to keep 100% ownership of a tiny business that's not going anywhere in the long run. Okay? So our mindset about competition and what opportunities are out there need to change. We need to see that there's a whole lot of opportunity out there, and we're better off collaborating with people to solve problems for the market. And if we take on really big problems, we'll think less of competition, to be honest. We'll be looking for collaborators.
Indeed. I mean, on the issue of housing, like you mentioned, the need is really, really huge. I think I was reading the other day and they said Nigeria probably needs to have 1 million extra units every year or something.
Every year.
And like you said, 100,000 is far away.
We're doing maybe, I mean, as an industry, we're doing a total of maybe 100,000 per annum. And we need a million houses per annum in order to be able to wipe off the deficit. Yeah. So who is your competition there? The competition is a problem.
And just to also mention as well, too, because I think this could be some form of benefits for some people attending today to be able to keep an eye on. You know, aside from the place of building houses in Nigeria, another challenge is the place of affordability. And I just want to mention, so if you go to the website, so guest today, his company, Co-Build It, what they're also working on around the philosophy of how can we also raise affordability. And one of the things that they are doing, they're experimenting with at the moment is crowdfunding. So the website has been placed in the chat window. You can check the website as well. So they're experimenting with also how can we crowdfund for affordability of houses. So sometimes they open up opportunities on their website where you can invest some money, little money, 250,000 or something, and gets returns on it. And you know that it's also some kind of social good investment. You're also helping to, and over time, I believe when you keep an eye on it, as that also grows up, becomes bigger, you might also be able to benefit from the other side of how you might buy a house with a very flexible scheme of pay, even when the mortgage is not very responsive in that country. Okay, so moving on to our last question here, which is, let me pull it up again. Yeah, when you work towards finding purpose in business and initially you forget about profit and all that and just get lost in providing value, at what time do you start considering money, profit, or monetization? And if you do this late, won't it backfire? How can one create a balance? I guess maybe the person missed the beginning. Okay.
Okay. I think David Adeyemi probably came in late or didn't pay attention to my emphasis. Profit is absolutely necessary. And let me sort of share again the analogy that I used for how we view profit as a company. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to share again the analogy that I used for describing how we view profit. So David, if you're hearing me, profit is absolutely important and you must think of it from day one. You may not make profit from day one, but you should be thinking about how that business can run sustainably from day one. And the only way that businesses run sustainably is to make profits. And here's how I view profits. So the human body is the vehicle that we have for pursuing purpose in this life, right? Now, the purpose of our lives is not to eat food. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. But I assure you that if we refrain from eating food for the next couple of months, we're not going to be alive. Okay. I'm assuming that you're one big man of God and you can fast 40 days and all of that. But if you stretch it past 40 days and you start getting towards 60 days, the body is not going to be able to sustain you anymore. And the body will no longer be available for you to fulfill purpose with. Okay? So that's how we view profit as a business, right? That for a while, you can run a business without a profit. But after a certain time frame, that business is going to die unless you make profit. Okay? So profit is absolutely important for a business to be sustainable long term. But what we're saying is just the same way that you don't focus your entire life and purpose on eating food. Food comes as a necessity so that you can fulfill your purpose. Profit for a business comes as a necessity so that business can continue to be in the market to serve the needs that it set out to serve.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I personally even believe that sometimes.
In one sentence, think about profit from day one.
Yeah, so I mean, I for one even believe that even when you are starting a social good company, if you think, yeah, this company is for social impact, sometimes there are ways you can even bring in, create some revenue stream around your social impact organization as well too, because I think a lot of social impact companies really need to rethink beyond thinking we have to raise funds to survive, we have to raise funds to keep going. You can actually create a money-making venture and still do your social good in the process. A company like Tom's, the Tom's shoes, for instance, for them, they are principally driven by social impact, but they sell their shoes. And they say that for every shoe that they sell in the developed world, they give out another shoe to those who are needy or something, wherever they are. So there are ways you can also think about this. So making money is not, it's not wrong at all.
So what Tom's has done is brilliant. That's called a cross subsidy. Okay, you're getting one person to pay so you can help someone else. Okay. And that sort of cross subsidy happens particularly in media, especially social media, right? So you use, we're on Zoom right now, it's free, okay? But it's not free, someone is going to pay ultimately. So what they're doing is a cross subsidy model. Someone else is going to pay for you to be able to use the platform. So that's a brilliant thing Tom's is doing. And again, just to reiterate, you need to think about sustainability from day one. And for many businesses, sustainability means profit.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for joining in today. We have other sessions I'll be having from time to time, and I put it out on my WhatsApp. Sometimes I put it out on social media and all that. I was trying to put out my number there. Oh, great. He even dropped his email. So if you want to reach out to him, you have any other question around business, around things like that, you can reach out to him. I'm very, very happy to see that you're able to put out your email for that. So that would be very, very good. So like I said, is to me, beyond just the mentor, I see him like my business pastor. So I reach out, and it's so funny sometimes when I'm making some business decisions, he's one of the people that it feels like he's at the back of my head whispering, and he's like, "Are you sure this is the right way to be doing this?" Sometimes when you listen to someone over and over, you begin to hear their voices even when they are not there. So thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And I also help out. I also look to help people as much as possible. I do training in around agile project management, business agility, and the likes from time to time. I'm currently planning to put together a career boot camp. I've not connected all the dots around it. There are a number of people, but I'm trying to focus only on people around project management, business analysis, because that's my area of expertise. I cannot give what I don't have. I can't do a career bootcamp for you to get into the health sector. Maybe my lovely friend who joined the session today, Dr. Sheung, might be able to do that for you. So, but around project management, business analysis, agile project management, if you've heard about some new roles around Scrum Master, product owner, product manager, things like that, I'm putting together a bootcamp to help people who are looking towards a career in that direction. So whether you've been on a different path before and you want to change in that direction, or you're just about to start. So just be on the lookout. When I have details on that, I will be putting it out. I like to drop my contacts as well too, because for those 6537398, 6537398. Okay, it's correct. So you can reach out to me as well too. Just let's build a community around this, so you don't miss our next information. So as we close in 2 minutes, if you just want to just give us a quick recap on everything that we've learned today, such that telling us that even if we forget any other thing, we shouldn't forget what you're going to tell us in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'd just like to take you back to scripture and just share 2 scriptures very quickly. The first one is Acts chapter 9, somewhere around verse 6. Apostle Paul, well, the person who later became Apostle Paul, asked a very important question. He asked, "What will you have me do?" That's a question all of us need to regularly ask the Lord, so that we can realign. Barry talked about alignment, so that we can realign, our lives with the things that He wants done. And the reason we ask this question is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 15, where, I'm paraphrasing, where it says that He died and was raised so that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but should live for Him who died and was raised for them. So essentially, if you're going to accept the saving grace of Jesus, it's on the condition that the life that you live afterward, you're going to live for Him. You can't accept His saving grace and continue to live your own life. You have to live the life that He determines for you to live. And so constantly, as we seek alignment for our lives, we're going to continue to ask Him, what would you have me do? Hello?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Yes, I was looking for something. Okay. So thank you very much,
okay.
Sir. And thank you very much. And in my parting remark on this, there's this book called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. And why did this book just come to me? It's just that a lot of times, some of us, we've understood what that purpose is, what that business is, but we just need to get up and get going, just take action. I got this book from one of my very amazing mentors as well, to Shola Afolayan. One of these days, most likely would get her to come around to speak to us in one of our sessions. So if you can't get that book, I would recommend it very much. In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, just talks about some things on, life is all about experience. You just need to get up and take the action and all that. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Architect Wale, once more for giving your time to this and being a great blessing to us. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Have a beautiful evening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much, Dozie. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Come on, here we go.